Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Justin. Always with me is my brother Ryan, our founder of our website. Ryan, say hi.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
We are wrapping up. Week 5 is in the books. Monday Night Football just got over, and we're doing the recording. As always, the first recording of the week is Monday night. I like to think of us as the first place to get your waiver pickups, because our show will be available tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, as one of the first shows that you can listen to get your waiver pickups. We're going to do a little bit of news tonight. For once, the NFL did not destroy everybody's rosters with injuries. The Grim Reaper did not show up this week, unless you were like me and you had Charles Sims and you were holding on. Hopefully he would come back, but now he's on IR. We'll get to that in a little bit. We're also going to do a little bit of a buy low, sell high topic, as well as get into the pickups that we normally talk about on our Tuesday show. And so getting into the news, for those of you who have Eddie Lacy, there was a little bit of a scare on Sunday Night Football with his ankle, but right now indications are it's not serious. But there is no commitment right now that he would play against the Cowboys. Something to monitor. Another running back to monitor, person we consider to be a bust so far this year, but still, because of the committee issues and the committee opportunity there, Latavius Murray's toe is doing a little bit better, and there is hope that he would return against the Chiefs in Week 6. Tony Romo is on his way back. Indications are that he's going to start practicing this week. It will take him a few weeks to get into game shape, but for those of you who have been streaming Dak Prescott, those days seem to be running short, with all indications from Jerry Jones that Tony Romo will take his spot back. For those of you who are Dallas Cowboys fans, I'm sorry. When Tony Romo comes back, you'll lose in the first round of playoffs. Cha-ching! My bad. Sorry. Sorry,
not sorry.
No, I'm not sorry. I will not review my favorite Romo play of all time. But moving on, one of the questions we talked a little bit about this off the air, but not directly a player, but this does affect a whole team. Mark Trestman has been fired as the offensive coordinator from Baltimore. What do you think this does to the likes of Flacco, Wallace, Steve Smith Jr., Kenneth Dixon, Terrence West? What do you think this does to those offensive players there at Baltimore with the transition now of Mark Trestman no longer there as the offensive coordinator?
Well, for the most part, I think in terms of the biggest thing to look at is the fact that this probably puts a halt on Kenneth Dixon for a little bit. With Trestman being the offensive coordinator, we were looking at him being kind of the pass catching back. He was going to take over the Buck Allen role. Buck Allen was had been a healthy scratch a couple of weeks, that showed what they thought of him. So I mean, in terms of offense, I still think that Terrence West is the running back for now, as long as he's holding on to the ball. I think they may ride him a little bit more. In terms of the passing, for now, I'm not seeing anything too different. Trestman is Trestman says that they always wanted to rely on the heavy game to really rely on the running game. He's always been known as a passing type of offensive coordinator. Jay Cutler in Chicago with throwing to Matt Forte and Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall. The one year where Forte had 100 and some odd catches. So
it's one good year.
Yeah, no, he's had a lot of good years. That was the apex of his productivity. Yeah, for now, I think for the most part everything stays the way it is, except for maybe we slow down on the Kenneth Dixon hype for now. But maybe if you've got him, hold on to him for now. Don't drop him prematurely. So.
The only other injury to really touch note on, not as serious as some of the others, is Jeremy Hill's injury is not serious. It looks like he will return to practice on Wednesday for the Bengals. Look to him to still continue to be that high-risk, high-reward running back who is very, very dependent upon end zone touches and red zone touches to get those touchdowns. Moving on to our buy low, sell high. Ryan, you've got a few players that would benefit some teams to grab now or to get rid of as soon as possible.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of articles all over ESPN and Yahoo about this, so I kind of wanted to give kind of some of my thoughts on guys to go after in terms of buy low. Guys that may have been drafted high that just are not producing right now but could soon. I've got a couple of Houston Texans on here. The obvious ones: DeAndre Hopkins, was a first round pick wide receiver. Had a great season last year. He is not clicking with Osweiler right now. I think it's possible that he could have a better second half this season. Again, he finally got his first touchdown this last week, and with Bill O'Brien now calling the plays, I think that Hopkins could be more of a central part of the passing game. Lamar Miller is the other obvious one. Lamar Miller leads the NFL, leads the NFL in touches, and still has not scored a touchdown yet. Now, due to his workload, he's still only averaging, I think, like 3.7 yards a carry, but he is going to get in the end zone. It's just a matter of time. I really think this next week, I want to say, who do they have? They have Indianapolis next week, and they're going to be at home. Indianapolis is horrible against the run. Indianapolis defense just in general is horrible. So if you can get Lamar Miller, someone to kind of give up on him, maybe give up, maybe like a wide receiver 2, in order to get Lamar Miller, I think he could really pay off for you.
Yeah, one of the things I want to mention there is he has faced Kansas City, a known run defense, New England, good defense, Tennessee, a surprisingly very, very well put together defense this year, and Minnesota. So those are 4 of his 5 games. So something's bound to change when he gets to the likes of Detroit, Jacksonville, Oakland, San Diego, teams like that.
Yeah. So he should, he's got some good games ahead of him. So if you can get someone to bypass, look past his upcoming schedule, Lamar Miller could be someone to target. Todd Gurley, I doubt anyone's going to give him up for just because he's starting to get a little more involved in the passing game. So especially in PPR, he's becoming a little more valuable. But he has been an obvious bust so far this year. So if you can get him, for a low price, go ahead. And you talked about Jeremy Hill kind of having a disappointing season, how his injury doesn't seem to be serious. I would go after Giovanni Bernard because he is getting more touches. He is being more productive in that offense. I think he's had 2 out of 3 games where he's close to, if not over, 100 total yards. So Gio Bernard is another big one for me. So those are my main ones. I had a couple other names on here, but they're just looking at them, they're really not worth it. They're probably going to be dropped here soon anyway. So you're better off just get them off the waiver wire once someone drops them. One guy to wait on, simply because we don't know how healthy he's going to be or when he's going to get healthy again, is Dante Moncrief. I believe once he gets back into that Indianapolis offense, he becomes that big body wide receiver in the red zone. He had a great first week, and I believe it was in week 2 where they faced Denver, where he got absolutely clobbered and broke his shoulder blade. So Moncrief could could be in for a good workload once he gets healthy again. He's still week to week, so maybe wait another week or two on him, and then he could be someone that, because of how long he's been out, you could either pick up off waivers or get semi-cheap. In terms of selling high, these are guys that maybe have overachieved or are just playing well that I think may drop off later in the season. Larry Fitzgerald, I think, is one. Now, I may get roasted by a whole bunch of people, especially after Drew Stanton, after Larry Fitzgerald had his great game on a Thursday Night Football. But Drew Stanton was absolutely horrible. It just so happened that 7 of his 11 completions went to Larry Fitzgerald, for crying out loud. So I think that with Carson Palmer's health being an issue, that I believe more passes are probably going to start going to John Brown. That this next week may be his big breakout game. So I'd kind of fade on Larry Fitzgerald. Another couple guys, Michael Crabtree, Amari Cooper is finally starting to show it, and I think as long as he stays healthy, he is going to start getting more of the passes. I want to say Amari Cooper in that game in San Diego. I think it was Amari Cooper that someone said he had four catches in the end zone. It just so happened that 3 of them he couldn't keep his feet in. 4 touchdowns and finished with only 1 touchdown. Michael Crabtree has 5 TDs in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I don't see that pace holding up. As long as Amari Cooper is getting going, Michael Crabtree is going to back off. So I think that I still believe that Cooper's the guy to own. Crabtree, you may be able to get a decent running back out of trading him. Another couple guys to sell high on. Terrell Pryor, I'm still uncertain on just with how much he's being asked to do. He may still, he may just be the guy to own. If you could get a decent running back out of Terrell Pryor simply because of how much of his ownership is, go ahead. Theo Riddick, I just don't trust that Detroit offense. Basically, the only person I trust in that offense to continue getting anything is Marvin Jones. Terrence West is another possible sell high candidate, especially with Kenneth Dixon. They believe was their most talented back, and the only reason he wasn't starting the beginning of the season is because he got injured with the MCL in preseason. So Terrence West could be a sell high candidate, and Isaiah Crowell. You could get if you're set at running back and need wide receiver help, Crowell could be someone. I think right now he's the number 8 running back in fantasy, even with the subpar, or maybe he's still top 10, top 12 with that subpar game against New England, but he was going up against New England. And they kind of had to abandon the run anyway. Cleveland had to abandon the run anyways because Tom Brady was throwing the ball over him just like we were expecting. And so Crowell, he's going to be somewhat matchup dependent. So due to how well he's played so far, if you can get value for him, I would go ahead and maybe trade him off. So those are the main things I've got. So
okay, moving on into our pickups. Actually, really quick, I want to touch up on our pick 'em and stick 'em so far this last week. Once again, this is the game that we're going to be running throughout the season. We did miss in week 1, but so far going into this last week, I am currently ahead 6-4. In kind of our matchups. Last week, I had Case Keenum, Jalen Richard, Vincent Jackson, Hunter Henry, and the Oakland defense for my team. Ryan had Blaine Gabbert, Jay Ajayi, Cole Beasley, Jesse James in Detroit. This is by far the closest it ever could have gotten with Ryan winning with Gabbert playing better than Keenum. Jalen Richard outperforms Jay Ajayi. Cole Beasley outperforms Vincent Jackson. The Oakland defense does outperform Detroit. It came down to
I want to recount on that one because Detroit gave up fewer points and was a lot more stingy. I still don't understand how it's I guess the turnovers have been the only way.
Sacks and turnovers.
Good.
Sacks and turnovers. The determining factor was Jesse James got 16.3 points in 1-point PPR against the Jets, and Hunter Henry pulled it out with 16.4 points against Oakland. So by 1 point. I win once again.
Freaking 10th.
Ahead 9-6 so far in the overall series. Once again, we will pick a new roster on Wednesday to get that out to you guys by Thursday morning.
And again, those are guys owned in under 50% of Yahoo leagues.
Yeah, those are all guys that are owned in under 50%. We kind of do it as a playfully way of picking of additional guys to pick up on the waivers in case you needed it. They're guys who may have a good matchup. I think this is the highest scoring week so far we've done in this. Once again, with Jalen Richard and Hunter Henry, Jesse James should be owned in every league, in my opinion, just because he's the biggest target in a high potent offense in the red zone. So, but moving into kind of our pickups for the week, I'm going to start with wide receiver. I'll do one really fast. This one's kind of on the button because right now he's owned in 51% of the leagues, according to Yahoo. But I'm going to go with it just because it's right there on the edge, and I'm going to go with Eddie Royal once again. He is right now the number one target for Brian Hoyer. He is getting blanketed with targets outside of Zach Miller. Eddie Royal is the number one target. Brian Hoyer, he just gets so many yards, but he likes to do it in the underneath game. Kind of a West Coast style quarterback, West Coast offense style quarterback. He's going to cut teams up underneath. A lot of touches, especially in a PPR league. Eddie Royal got 7 receptions, didn't get a whole lot of yards, but he's getting targeted. The production is there. Someone that you should go out and get because of that is Eddie Royal. Ryan, what wide receiver do you have?
Actually, I've got a couple. Actually, I had like 4 of them, but in terms of really going after targets, Sammy Coates is my main one. He is the Martavis Bryant this year for the Steelers. He is officially taken over that role. We have seen his target numbers drastically increase throughout this entire season. If we go to, let's look at it right here. So he had 3 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets in the first 3 games. He had 8 in week 4, 11 in week 5, and in that week 5, 139 yards and 2 TDs. So he is the deep ball threat that Martavis Bryant was last year. And, a lot of people are saying, well, he's dropped the ball. Yeah, he dropped a 1-yard touchdown in the end zone right there. No one within 5 yards of him. Hits him in the hands. And he tried catching it with, ping pong paddles.
He tried catching it with my hands.
But, people tend to fail to forget that Martavis Bryant also suffered from an issue with drops. So I think Sammy Coates is a guy to pick up. He's only owned in 38% of Yahoo leagues. That is definitely going to change this week. So go out and get him. The other guy that I have to target real quick, Michael Thomas of New Orleans. He's on a bye week this week. He was on the one this week in week 5. He back week 6. 53% of Yahoo leagues in which he is owned. He is actually leading the New Orleans Saints receivers in targets through 4 weeks. After 4 weeks in the season. So while that may not sustain, especially with Willie Snead coming back, if Snead or Cooks ever goes out, he's definitely got to own. I think he's more of a flex flyer play depending on who you have in the matchup. But Michael Thomas, I definitely think is someone that you could pick up or maybe even get to trade away to someone once someone gets injured. So.
My last receiver that I had one more, and that's Chris Hogan. With the return of Tom Brady, I believe Chris Hogan is the deep threat that he will go to on 5 targets, 4 carries, 114 yards. Chris Hogan has done very, very well, except for week 3 and week 4, where he had Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball, taking quarterback snaps, and there was just no production. There was nowhere to throw the ball. And so I think now with Chris Hogan having solidified his role and his position, and with Tom Brady coming back, the only 2 receivers really to own are Julian Edelman and Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan, once again, being that deep threat, you're going to get a lot of yards. You may not get a lot of red zone targets because of Gronkowski, Bennett, and Edelman. There's just too many names. of go-to guys in the red zone, but I think Chris Hogan will get yards, probably a little bit more advantageous in a standard league because he's not going to get a lot of receptions, but he is going to get some yards, averaging right now, just eyeball math, he's averaging about 15 to 20 yards per catch so far this season, so that's something to be aware of. Moving on, one receiver that I wish no one will pick up this week and they wouldn't chase points, this is the only one I'm really going to point out, I'm going to stay away completely, is Brandon LaFell. His points all came in garbage time. That's no reason to chase a player because Cincinnati should be in more games than that, and Brandon LaFell really only got points late in the game when Dallas more or less stopped playing defense.
Correct.
Moving on to the running backs, we're going into I want to cover one player that was on our Pick 'em and Stick 'em last week, and that's Jalen Richard. He did split carries with DeAndre Washington. He was more productive with his carries. I know a lot of people have been talking about DeAndre Washington being the most productive running back when Latavius Murray was available and they were doing a three-back system. Well, when it was 1-1, when there's just two running backs, Jalen Richard outperformed DeAndre Washington because the running back position is so depleted. Jalen Richard is someone you should pick up. The other one to pick up, this one might be a steal from you, Ryan, is Bilal Powell. You saw he out-touched and out-carried Matt Forte this last week. Look for that to be more of a trend with Forte being older and older and being overworked in the beginning part of the season. I know you and I both did not like Forte for the whole season. He did splash early, but I think you'll begin to see Matt Forte not only come back down to earth, but also go below his projection and kind of level off and come back to the mean.
Yeah, you stole one of mine. That's okay. I'll throw it in. Well, I mean, just to kind of stick on Bilal Powell. Bilal Powell is a PPR guy. He is going to get a lot of his production is going to be in the passing game. I mean, if you look at what Matt Forte did, week 1, 22 carries, 96 yards. Week 2, 30 carries, 100 yards and 3 TDs. The next 3 weeks, 15 carries, 14 carries, 12 carries. He's also not getting the pass. He's also being taken out in pass downs, and a lot of that's going to Bilal Powell, who in the last few weeks has had those first 2 weeks 4 targets, 2 targets, 4 rushes, 1 rush. Since then, he's had a minimum of 4 rushing attempts in every game in the last 3 weeks, and has had 6 receptions every week on 7, 9, and 8 targets. So while he's not getting the touchdowns, he is, if you're in a PPR league, Bilal Powell is a guy you've got to own. He's getting the production, he's getting the passes, and making more with them than right now than Matt Forte is. If you just look at plain production, the last 3 weeks, 11.1, 14, and 11.1 for Bilal Powell. For Matt Forte, it is 8.4, 6.3, and 8. I actually think that will continue, especially going into this next week against Arizona. At Arizona, with a tough defense that can stop the run, Bilal Powell is going to get more chances catching the ball out of the backfield. So, and then the other guy that I had was James White. PPR guy. Brady loves throwing the short passes. With Brady back, James White is going to be the guy to own. He's Deion Lewis until Deion Lewis comes back. So, James White is only owned in 46% of leagues. I still don't understand. Again, back to Bilal Powell. I still don't understand how he's only owned in 35% of Yahoo leagues. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. The other one I don't get is why Derrick Henry is only owned in 54% of leagues. I'm telling you, DeMarco Murray will begin to bend throughout the rest of the season, just like Matt Forte, but that I don't want to get too deep into because, once again, we need to move on. The tight ends, I know that we talked about this a little bit beforehand. I'll cover one. I want to talk about Jesse James once again because I mentioned that he should be owned in every league because right now the Steelers are steamrolling everybody the last 2 weeks, and Jesse James is the tallest and biggest target for Big Ben in the red zone. There's no other receiver that even comes close to his height, and Le'Veon Bell's not his height either. So if you need to get a traffic touchdown in the red zone, Jesse James is the guy. Now, he's not going to get a lot of catches downfield or anything like that, but in the check down game and in the massive traffic game and the checkdowns, you're going to see Jesse James be productive, and so that's why I think he's a good tight end. Once again, a lot of middle of the road tight ends and a lot of good tight ends, good name tight ends have not produced very well. I think Jesse James, you could do a whole lot worse.
Yeah, I think he's the perfect streaming option, especially based on matchup. They don't have a bye until week 8.
He's going up against Miami this week.
Yeah, he's got Miami this week. And we still know nothing about Ladarius Green, if he's even going to be able to come back. So I think for now, yeah, Jesse James is definitely a guy that should be owned. He's only owned in 23% of the leagues, which boggles my mind. He's not high volume. He is somewhat touchdown dependent. However, with how often they are in the red zone, I think he's a good safe target. The other tight end I wanted to cover was Hunter Henry, owned in 28% of leagues. Antonio Gates is back, is healthy. However, the guy is 35, 36. I don't know how much longer he's going to be able to hold up. And Hunter Henry has proven if Gates is out, Henry's a tight end one.
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers likes throwing to his tight ends, and Hunter Henry will be the guy, the tight end, the pass-catching tight end, if Gates is out. And so watch Gates. If he's not healthy, Hunter Henry is going to be involved. I think Henry may still be involved with Gates back. Maybe not quite to the same extent, but again, he would be a great matchup-based guy to go after. So,
quarterbacks, to me, there's two good ones. Mariota currently owned at less than 50%. That's going to drastically change because he was the number one fantasy producer this last week on ESPN's standard leagues. He's going to get picked up, so that's kind of an easy quarterback pickup. The other one I want to talk about is Brian Hoyer. Yep. They have done much better as a offense in producing more yards with Hoyer than with Jay Cutler. John Fox has said that it's up in the air. This is something that I would not go out and waste a high waiver pick early in the week. But if you want to stream a quarterback later in the week and you want to wait to make your decision later in the week based off of matchups and really having a lot more information, I think Hoyer is someone that you should definitely look at because of his ability to get yards and be able to move the ball. I think you can get Brian Hoyer for nothing, especially in Fab if you wait till later in the week.
Here's the deal. Brian Hoyer, you may want to go a little bit quicker on Brian Hoyer. And here's why. In the last 3 weeks, Brian Hoyer has only played four games?
He's played in 4 games. Well, he started 3.
He started 3, and they have thrown the heck out of the ball in all 3 games that he has started in.
300 yards every game.
300 yards every game. He is putting up 20-point games in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. He's put up 22, 23, and 27 points in the last 3 weeks. So he's got Jacksonville and Green Bay the next 2 weeks. Neither one of them can stop the pass.
Yeah.
And so I mean he'll have a little bit of a rough matchup on Halloween against Minnesota going into the week 9 bye. But I honestly think the job is his. Maybe be a little bit cautious simply because we don't know for sure if they're going to give the job back to Cutler. But, Brian Hoyer has at least shown himself to be competent, and they're going to be throwing the ball like crazy. So,
yeah, the one defense that I do want to bring up is is the Baltimore defense. Once again, they're going to be playing the Giants this week, and the Giants have just struggled, in my opinion. Yes, they won this last week, I believe. Did they beat Patriots?
No.
They
They definitely lost to the Packers.
Well, there goes my thought process on that. It was a long weekend. But once again, Eli Manning struggling. Odell Beckham did not get a lot of catches. And I think Baltimore has been a solid defense. They're going to need to produce some points because who knows what their offense is going to do. I think picking the Giants defense would be a trap because sometimes when take the Detroit Lions win, Jim Bob Cooter came in as the new offensive coordinator. They won their first game, and they put up points. And so I think you need to be aware of just some streaming options on defense. Once again, we like to stream defenses just like we like to stream quarterbacks. And so I would think Baltimore would be a solid pick on the defensive side.
Yeah, I'd look maybe. I mean, just looking at matchups, Pittsburgh's defense might be an okay start simply because they're going up against Miami. Detroit could be an okay game. They've got the Rams coming in for a 10 a.m. 10 a.m. against the for the West Coast teams.
That's always a problem.
Yeah, and especially for a team like the Rams that isn't very good. So
yeah.
I think that Detroit. No one's really going to be on the Detroit defense. They seem to show a little bit this last weekend, going up against Carson Wentz and a Philadelphia offense that has played very, very well so far this year. So I think looking at the Detroit defense is a possible way to go. So.
Well, that about does it for our show. Once again, we want to thank you for joining us at the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. Once again, brought to you by Box DFS Firelines at boxdfs.com. We're going to cover the daily fantasy in the next episode, as always, on the one that's going to come out Thursday morning. But once again, I'm your host, Justin.
Ryan.
Always Ryan joining us. Once again, thanks you for joining us at the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, and good luck in Week 6.
All right, we'll talk to you later, guys.